Yo! Welcome to Talking Sports with the KingR. I'm your host, the KingR. And today we're going to be talking about the college football playoffs. It's finally here. I'm excited. I'm happy, especially now that they expand the teams from 4 to 12. And the question becomes, did the committee get it right? And after the events we saw on, well, the final rankings prior to the conference championship games and the results of the conference championship games, I say yes, the committee did get it right. And of course, just like before, when there was only 4 teams, you're gonna have schools, athletic directors, coaches give their 2 cents on how, we appreciate, you know, the committee, but we feel like we were left out. What did we do wrong? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is one of the reasons why the playoffs got expanded to include more, but yet you're going to have 2 to 3, maybe 5 teams left out of the playoffs. And and fight for their cases and so on and so forth. Because, I mean, even when you only had 4, you know, like good example last year, the last time you only had a 4-team playoff. And the committee chose Alabama over Florida State last year. Even knowing Florida State went undefeated, Florida State won their conference championship game. But they decided to go with Alabama, who only had 1 loss. I don't believe they played in their conference championship game. And they chose Alabama because of criteria, how they were playing, and they were healthy, unlike Florida State, who lost their star quarterback, who they didn't struggle to win the ACC, but they weren't the same team. Now, here we go, 12 teams, new criteria. You're conference champion, you're practically in. At least if you're one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Get automatic bids. You're in. Just similar to March Madness. Okay? Where winning your conference uh, you know, gets you into the tournament, gets your foot in. Where before we saw throughout the 10 years of the 14 playoffs where even if you won your conference, like I think for example Penn State won the Big Ten back in 2016, I think it was, memory serves me correct, give or take, but they had 2 losses. Okay, but they beat Ohio State. That's why they got to the Big Ten championship game, and they won the Big Ten championship game. But their 2 losses, I forget, was it? They had a conference loss, and they lost to Pitt. They lost to Pittsburgh, and the committee felt like, well, that loss against Pittsburgh is detrimental to who you really are. Even though that was only week 4, it's a blemish on your resume. And unfortunately, that's what the committee has to pick and choose and dig through this and that. And with hoping by expanding the playoffs, you get less of this riptide. Okay? And like even the first time 10 years ago, in the first ever college football playoffs, the committee picked Ohio State over um, TCU and Baylor. Why? Because Ohio State played that extra game. They won their conference championship legit, outright. And it was not a um, sweating bullets. They put up a whooping on my Wisconsin Badgers. Okay. And they decided, they played that extra game. They showed why they should be in the college football playoffs. Here you go. TCU, Baylor. Well, maybe if you would have played a conference championship game, but at the time you only have 10 teams in the Big 12, and you can't have a conference game unless you have 12 teams in your conference. Boy, things have changed since. On qualifications for college championship games, and maybe to some extent, conference championship games might get eliminated. But I kind of find that hard to believe just because of, we all know what this is all about, the almighty dollar. That's why they were all scared. That's one reason why they're scared, because they knew how much money bowl games were bringing in. And it's like, well, if we switch to a playoff system, how are we going to make the most of it money wise? This and that. And I feel like the bowl systems are going to slowly get faded out. The college football playoffs are going to slightly expand, and we move on there. It's not like the FCS hasn't been doing a playoff system for the last, I don't know, 45 years, give or take, and slowly expanding from 4 to 8 to 12 to 24 currently. But but this is the big boys, the FBS. But okay, so how about no more delay? Let's actually get to the teams that made the playoffs, the final rankings. That tells me who's who. Let's get to the actual rankings. And like I said, new qualifications for at least this year. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're actually going. They have to rewrite a new contract for the playoffs. What I was looking at, that since they expanded the playoffs, this and that. How? Okay, the top 5 conference champions ranked get automatic bids, but yet we have 10 conferences. You got the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, technically the Pac-12, Mountain West, Conference USA, the Mid-American Conference, the MAC, the Sun Belt, and the American Athletic Conference. I think that they still go by that, but short by the American Conference. 10 conferences and Notre Dame, more or less, which sums up about 132 schools, give or take. So, if you're one of those 10, if half the conferences automatically make the playoffs. As long as you're on the top half ranked wise, and luckily, if you're 1 through 4 conference champions, you get a bye. And then the rest are at large and Notre Dame and Notre Dame. So the final rankings went as such. At number 1, Oregon. They went 13-0. No surprise there. Number 2, Georgia. SEC. No surprise there. Third in the rankings, Texas. They lost in the SEC championship game, so yeah, let's just sneak them up there. The SEC bias. Number 4, Penn State. Well, they did play in the conference championship game. They lost to Oregon in the shootout. Number 5, Notre Dame. 11-1. Why? Why aren't? Well, I think the question becomes: can Notre Dame ever get a bye? And I think hypothetically, no, they cannot. At least at the moment. Sixth in the rankings, Ohio State. Big Ten, 3 teams so far. Seventh, Tennessee. They didn't. Neither of those teams played in their conference championships. That's 3 teams now for the SEC. Number 8, Indiana, 11-1. They missed playing their conference title game, but now that's 4 teams from the Big Ten. Number 9, Boise State, Mountain West. Good for them. That's another reason why I like the expanded playoff systems, to give that little guy a chance. Number 10, SMU. They are ace. They missed they made the ACC championship first time in and got to the championship game, but lost, unfortunately. Excuse me. Then we got Alabama's 11th. Arizona State is 12th. They're the Big 12 champion. Okay. Then we have Miami, University of Miami. The U, ACC. They're 13th. Ole Miss, they're 14th. South Carolina, they're 15th. And then Clemson, they're ranked 16th. And they're the ACC champions. So we already have the Big Ten, the SEC, Mountain West, Big 12, and now ACC. So there's your 5 conference champions who are automatically in. So, if you have those 5. So then you're at large are the next 7 in rank. Boom, boom, boom. But since we're this far, BYU finished 17th, Iowa State finished 18th, Mizzou 19th, Illinois 20th, Syracuse is 21st, Army finished 22nd. That's your 6th next highest ranked conference champion, who did finish 11-1, but yet we have our traditional Army-Navy game the week after conference championship games. So, yeah, they only have 1 loss, and that was to Notre Dame. So why aren't they maybe ranked a little higher? Just because they're in the American Conference? But I digress. Colorado is 23rd, UNLV 24th, and Memphis rounds off the top 25 in the college football playoff rankings. So, like I said before, you have Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, Arizona State, and Clemson are your top 5 conference champions, which then leaves you Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana, and SMU. Those are your teams that made the initial 12-team college football playoffs. So, congratulations. I do have a soundboard, but I have not hooked it up or got that operating quite yet. One of these days I'll tinker with it more and get it all figured out. But congratulations to those 12 teams. And that was the big question. The big question. In the rankings prior to the conference championship games, it was pretty much the same, but instead of Clemson, they had Alabama as the 12th seed, and then Miami as the 13th, or slightly after that. Then it was like Arizona State, I think it was. And of course, since the question became going into the conference championship games, you had Clemson versus SMU. SMU only had the 1 loss. And it was more around that. you knew between Arizona State and Iowa State, who played for the Big 12 championship, the winner of that team's going to get in. They're going to have what, 2 or 3 losses, I think. Um, no, why can't I? Why doesn't this one have it? Should. Oh, blah blah. I have to go back. Trying to figure out how many losses Iowa State had. That was more of my question because they finished what 15th in. They finished 18th. They were 10-3, so they only had 2 losses on the year. Arizona State had 2 losses on the year. They were both going in at 10-2, so one of them was going to get in with only 2 losses. But like I said, it all came down to SMU. What if SMU loses to Clemson? Clemson already has 3 losses, but they're going to be one of the top conference champions, top 5 conference champions ranked wise, and SMU, they're playing the conference championship. They only have 1 loss. Depending on how that game turned out, which was they lost on the last second field goal, how would the committee take that into consideration? Would the loss be so detrimental that this team does not deserve to play for a conference championship? And a team like Alabama, even knowing they have 3 losses, even knowing it was to Vanderbilt, I think Georgia, and an Oklahoma team on the road by 21 points. Or does Miami sneak in somehow? Do they leapfrog Alabama, even knowing they have 2 losses within their conference in the ACC against Syracuse and Wake Forest by a combined of I don't know. I think off the top of my head it was like 8-9 points, if that. And it's always fun. It's always funny when the first rankings come out and like, oh man, why are they ranked so high? None of those rankings really matter until the final rankings. Well, after all the games are played, and unfortunately they have to rely on a committee to pick and choose the at-large teams is kind of BS. I know Alabama's AD was complaining, we respect, but what are we supposed to do? We schedule these non-conference games, and that's what you want. But you didn't lose your non-conference games; you lost your conference games. And now that the SEC has like 18, 20 teams, the Big 12 has 18 teams, or Big 10 has 20 teams or whatever, you can't play everyone within your conference a year, especially since the SEC only plays 8 conference games, and I think the Big 10 and others, they play 9. They try to play more, but you're only playing half your conference. And like Indiana this year, they didn't play Ohio State, they didn't play Michigan. I don't think they played Penn State. No, Indiana did play Ohio State. That was their 1 loss. My bad. But I mean, still, they didn't play Oregon. They didn't play Washington. So I mean, this is why I don't like the conferences being so big. Go back to 12. Schools, 14 at most, 10 at minimum. And then you have a better opportunity. You can still schedule those powerful non-conference games. But then if you beat up your conference, you win your conference championship game, if they still want that. Because I know that's one thing I was reading about from somebody that, in the FCS, they don't have conference championship games, okay? They, whoever has the best record, and they have tiebreaker procedures. I mean, that's how they had to figure out who's going to play in the SEC championship game, who's going to play in the Big 12 championship game, who's going to play in the Big Ten championship games. All these tiebreaker procedures, strength of schedule or points for and this and that. I think someone was joking about, just flip a coin to determine it. So, like I said before, the main question is, did the committee get it right? And like I said, yes. And I think the answer was always going to be yes, no matter who you ask. That that the committee got the right 12 teams. 5 were automatic, and the other 7 were, how you think the next best at large are, okay? And I was hoping for a Georgia loss, okay? If Georgia lost, they would have had three losses, okay? They're in the same boat as, say, Alabama. Do they get leapfrogged by Alabama? Or does Miami leapfrog them? It would have been so, and I know the committee, they would have, if anything, Alabama would have gotten then if Georgia would have lost. But unfortunately, we don't have that, scenario. It would have been so fun to watch. Georgia would try to say why they deserve to be in this and that. Maybe next year. Maybe next year we'll have that little more chaos. But like I said before, Army only had 1 loss. It was against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, they only have 1 loss. That was against Northern Illinois. Okay. But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to watch. See how this turns out. Looking at my calendar, we got. But like I said, hopefully, maybe within the next 10 years they expand the playoffs to 16. Maybe they'll have a 2014 format, just like the FCS. And I know some old fuddy-duddies were saying before, oh man, this is so much hard stress, work, this and that on these kids, our student athletes. And it's like, there's more than just football that's going on right now in college. Yes, I know it's the moneymaker. It's, but I mean, you got volleyball. You got cross country, soccer, and what other fall sports. But then you also have hockey, basketball, baseball. They have all these multiple team playoff systems, and you don't think these student athletes, these young men and women, don't have to go through the same thing as football? You have practice, you have schoolwork, this and that. So, I mean, landscape's changing. Don't give me that crap that, it's so much on these kids. It's like, what about the other programs? So, okay, let's quickly run down the matchups, and then we'll probably get out of here. So, first round of the playoffs. What do we got? We have Friday and Saturday, the 20th and 21st. And the higher ranked teams will host the playoffs. So you have the number 8 seed Ohio State hosting number 7 seed Tennessee. The winner of that matchup will play Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Then you have Texas versus Clemson. Clemson gets to host a playoff game. The winner of that gets to face Arizona State. Then you have Notre Dame hosting Indiana. So in-state rivalry there. Oh wait, no, Clemson. I'm wrong. The Texas Clemson game, that game's in Texas. My bad. Anyways, Notre Dame, Indiana, games in South Bend, Indiana. The winner of that will go and play Georgia. And backtrack just a little bit. The Texas Clemson, the winner plays Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. The winner of Indiana Notre Dame plays Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. And lastly, Penn State hosts SMU Winner plays Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. And those games will be January 1st. And oh, three of the games are January 1st, and then the one's on the 31st. So, just looking at my calendar, I have off here. That's almost 10 days, depending on. Yeah, 10 to 11 day rest period. Oh man, I hate that. Just give me a week, you know. Put them on the 27th and 28th, but no, these games have to be played on the first and second, and then. But I suppose you have the semifinals that are going to be January 10th and 9th, and then championship. But see, that's what I'm saying. Looking at my calendar, off screen here, if they would just play them the 27th, 28th, and then the following week, the semifinals, January 3rd and 4th, and then, take that week off. I guess January now. Because what is it? 9th and 10th, and then another 10 days off for rest. That's third week into January. And that's already like, what, 2 weeks in the NFL playoffs. Oh, jeez. But still. Whatever, it's a work in progress. By then, the FCS has their conference champion crown. So, I might try to keep doing videos throughout the playoffs. Jeez. And just give my 2 cents here and then, talk some other sports. I mean, it's not like college football is the only thing. That's just my premise for this episode. I mean, next time I know we would have when I do it, we would have an NBA Cup crown. The first round of the playoffs would have been played. I mean, we have some baseball talk. Juan Soto. Oh man, need my 15-year contract with the Mets worth $10 billion or whatever. Anyway, so we'll just throw this out real quick. My thoughts: who's gonna win? The first round of the playoffs. Clemson, Texas. I would say Texas handily beat up on Clemson, but Clemson can beat teams from Texas, I guess. Tennessee, Ohio State. Unfortunately, I have to go with Tennessee. Ohio State is horrendous against SEC teams, especially in the postseason. And how they played against Michigan, boy, oh boy. I mean, sure, it's going to be at the Horseshoe. And, there was fisticuffs against that game against Michigan. And what a surprise, the Big Ten did not suspend any players. I wonder why. But, man, that game, to be honest, could go either way. But, you know what? I'll change my mind here. I'll go with Ohio State because of home field advantage. SMU, Penn State. Oh, man. I really do think Jonathan Franklin, he's a fraud and crumbles under pressure. Sure, he's at home. He's playing the number 11th team in the nation. They're 9-point favorites. I'm sure they'll win. And then hopefully get beat up by Boise State. And then finally, Indiana, Notre Dame. You know what? Give me the Hoosiers. Give me the Hoosiers. So that would set up Indiana versus Georgia. Penn State versus Boise State. Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas versus Arizona State. So that would only give the SEC 2 teams. Because right now they only have 3. Yeah, they only have 3. Big Ten has 4. This and that. So those are my picks. Yeah, we'll go with that. Something like that. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on the The college football playoffs, like I said, did the committee get it right? I say yes. But hopefully in the near future they expand and we see some more teams not normally associated in the national championship picture get a chance to play for a national championship. You know, I'm happy for SMU. I'm happy for Arizona State. I'm happy for Indiana. You know, I'm truly happy for Boise State. You know, here you go. Finally, you didn't have to be like some other teams to switch conferences to get recognition to make your case for a national championship. And so I hopefully one day, if we get more conferences or that all the conference champions get automatic bids, I'm happy for that. So this will be fun. We get a week to rest, and then we're in the playoffs for college football. If I'm just talking about FBS, but anyways, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. So until next time, adios, muchachos.